What is up once again, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to my show, Crimes of Musical Shock, where I, Rennie P, review various albums, both past and present, in their utmost splendor. Today's episode has me covering the 1991 self-titled debut from Mike Patton's spectacularly bizarre project, Mr. Bungle. Sounding exactly like its clowny cover, the album is an audio funk metal circus of frenetic genre switching and twisted sexual and dark humor strewn haphazardly throughout the album's 10 dizzying tracks. Now, compared to Mike Patton's main band, Faith No More, Mr. Bungle is generally considered to be the weirder younger brother of the two. This debut doesn't falter in being as weird as possible, basing itself off of the funk metal foundation that Faith No More was already rocking with and fucking it up in as many ways possible that almost sounds like stimming in musical form. If John Zorn, the world-renowned sax-squealing New Yorker, being the producer of this album was not enough to convince you of its true nature, then I honestly don't know what to tell you. Hints of circus march and ska, as well as various forms of Zolo, all taken from various influences, including Fishbone, probably the most important one here with their mix of ska and funk metal, Cardiacs, Captain Beefheart, Oingo Boingo, The Specials, and an assortment of others trickle their way into this album, with every song having its own quirk in the process. For instance, one of my personal favorites and an album highlight, Squeeze Me Macaroni, made complete with Patton's fast and culinarily orgiastic rapping, is one of the many embodiments of Patton's creative energy at its most unbounded and highest that appear on this album and in the albums following, as Mr. Bungle would go completely off the rails with their follow-up Disco Volante before coming round full circle in the pop madness of California. The album, being all kooky that it is, though, still has some fairly heavy moments, especially in the slower romps that make their way on here. The opener, Travolta, titled quote-unquote on reissues of the album for copyright reasons, actually more so because of the advice of Warner Brothers Records, who published this album, is essentially that reintroducing this album with as much of its quirkily heavy flair, with the out-of-place keyboards and bass emanating early 70s Herbie Hancock energy into the evil clown's stomping rhythm. The Girls of Porn offers a hornier and even more funk-filled alternative romp, as Patton takes on the persona of a man bragging about his chronic porno addiction. Slowly growing deaf and Love as a Fist are unafraid to show the thrashiness of the band's earlier days during their demo tape recording era, including some of the most badass sounding moments on this album. Zorn's sax performance on the latter especially shows how much he was able to shine ever since he put out his album Naked City the year before, snaking his way in as the most metal saxophonist to have ever lived. On the other hand, there is Egg, which rolls through its metalized ska grooves before descending down into a Wizard of Oz-themed spiral of madness with the refrain of "There's no place like home," after delivering metaphorical forms of societal critique. Dead Goon, the closer, is an absolutely crazy avant-prog freakout that rivals those of Zappa himself, bringing back in the circus, funk, ska, and scary shit all into some of the craziest 10 minutes of music that I myself have ever heard. Stub-a-Dub reaches similar levels of progginess, as it even bothers to throw in some cabaret-style piano. Need I mention the more quiet field recordings and skits that break up the tracks on here? While I do feel they bog down the musical content of Mr. Bungle to a degree, I think they still highlight the humor these guys had while they were making this, especially in tandem with the recurrent sampling of David Lynch's Blue Velvet and the various video games that show up on here. Some of these examples really demonstrate how eclectic the band was with their sound and continued to be as a foundation for what their music would entail, which makes me wonder if this was catered specifically to autists. But when looking in retrospect, this record became absolutely legendary in the underground, as eventually a whole wave of bands emerged that were either heavily inspired or trying to copy Mr. Bungle's goofy multi-genre style of avant-garde metal. Some examples of which include the work of Tim Smolens, who would eventually work with Bungler here, Trey Spruance in Secret Chiefs 3, Darth Vegas, Idiot Flesh, and their successor band Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum, and Nuclear Rabbit, all mainly going for some sort of avant-proggy funk metal sort of style that was theatrical in nature. You could even make an argument that the first couple Will Wood albums were particularly inspired by the funk metal madness of this album. Even more so, extending out of the underground, nu metal might not have been possible without the album, as bands such as Mushroom Head, Korn, and System of a Down have openly acknowledged the influence of the band in this era here as formative of their early years, respectively, especially through prominent bass and scratchy guitars. Back to the album itself, though, it is safe to say that this is one made for the true freaks. The sheer unserious approach to experimentality that Mike Patton and the rest of his Bungle Boy crew take on this album is in particular and expand upon in later albums will become absolutely legendary in its own right for creating some of the craziest and silliest sounding rock music of the past 3 decades or so, while providing some very surrealist reflections on society in its lyrics that still ring true to this day. Even now, it still blows my mind how in the hell they were able to get these songs on tape, stuffing in as much as possible musically into the Bungle's giving turkey of sorts. Bravo, Mr. Patton. I give this album here 4.5 stars. Hey guys, hope you liked this video review. If you really did, don't forget to smash those like and subscribe buttons if you want to see more content from me, which I most definitely will be working on. Feel free to also comment what you thought of the album. Was it to your expectations? Do you disagree with me? Was this album just plain too damn goofy for you? Anything that comes to mind. For now, though, I shall go. Bye-bye.